I met Ethan on a rainy Tuesday at the train station. He stood next to me on the platform. He was shaking water from his coat. He held a coffee in one hand. He looked like someone who had been through hard times but had survived. I noticed this about him. I always noticed people who seemed quiet on the outside but strong on the inside. He smiled at me like he knew me already. "Terrible rain," he said. His voice was soft, but he spoke with confidence. I smiled back. "That's London for you." We talked for 10 minutes. It felt like 10 seconds. When my train came, he asked if he could call me. I gave him my number. Something inside me said, "Say yes." I didn't know his last name, but I didn't care. It was the first time in a long time that I felt awake. I was 27 years old. I worked in an office. My job was fine. My life was quiet. I spent most of my time writing emails and going to bed early. My last relationship ended badly. I promised myself not to fall in love too fast again. But Ethan was different. Or so I thought. We met for dinner the next weekend. He was funny. He chose his words carefully. He asked about my life, my family, and my dreams. He listened. Not many people did that. He told me he worked in property sales. He traveled often. He was often tired, but he loved his job. He looked at me like I was more important than his phone. I didn't realize until then how rare that was. By the third date, he picked me up from work. By the fifth date, he held my hand in public. My friends said it was too fast. I laughed. "You don't know him like I do," I told them. But maybe the truth was that I didn't know him either. After 6 weeks, he asked me to marry him. We sat on a park bench. We shared takeaway noodles for dinner. He looked at me seriously. Then he said, "I know this is quick, but I've never felt something so right." I stared at him. I didn't know what to say. "Say no if you want," he added. "But I need to ask. I want a life with you." My head said no, but my heart was tired of waiting. It was tired of being careful. It was tired of listening to warnings. I nodded. "Okay," I whispered. We got married 3 months later in a small registry office. There was no big church. There was no long white dress. I wore a simple blue dress. He wore a grey suit. He kissed me gently. Then he whispered, "You won't regret this." That sentence stayed with me more than the kiss. At first, marriage felt wonderful. It felt like falling asleep in warm sheets. He made coffee in the morning. He called me during the day. He kissed my forehead before bed. I moved into his apartment. It was large and modern. It was on the edge of the city. It had cold walls and expensive furniture. I told myself I would get used to it. But slowly, small things began to feel strange. He was always on his phone, but he never let me see the screen. He started working late often, even on Sundays. Once I asked him to have dinner with my sister. He said, "Why do we need to meet your family again? We already got married, didn't we?" His smile didn't reach his eyes anymore. I told myself I was imagining things. I wanted to believe that. But the bad feeling in my stomach didn't go away. One night, I woke up. The bed was empty. It was 3 o'clock in the morning. I walked into the living room. Ethan sat in the dark. His phone was in his hand. When he saw me, he put it down quickly. I couldn't sleep, he said. I wanted to ask more questions, but I didn't. I went back to bed. He followed 10 minutes later. He turned his back to me. The next morning, I asked him, "Are you okay? You've been different." "I'm fine," he said. "You're overthinking again. You always do that." That was the first time he raised his voice at me. After that, things changed faster. He stopped calling during the day. We ate dinner in silence. When I tried to talk, he said I was too emotional. One evening, I looked at him across the table. I realized I didn't know this man. I had married someone I barely understood, and now I lived in his world. A few weeks later, I found something that shocked me. I was cleaning the spare room. He rarely went into that room. Behind some boxes, I found a small black bag. Inside were papers, contracts, and house documents. There was also a photo of him with a woman and 2 children. They were all smiling. My hands went cold. The photo looked new. The names on the papers weren't mine or his, but his face was clear in the photo. Ethan was smiling like he belonged to a different life. I sat on the floor for a long time. When he came home that night, I didn't say anything at first. Then I looked at him and said, "We need to talk." He stared at me. "About what, Pag, and the other room?" His eyes froze, his lips moved, but no words came out. I didn't ask if he was married. I already knew. He said nothing. He walked to the kitchen. He poured a glass of water. He drank it slowly. Then, without looking at me, he said, "You were not supposed to find that." There was no apology. There was no surprise. Just calm acceptance. My heart beat so hard I could feel it in my throat. "Who is she?" I asked. He looked at me. "Someone I used to care about. That life is over." I shook my head. "You have children?" He nodded. "Yes." "And you didn't tell me he put the glass down." I didn't think it mattered anymore. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay next to him. But it felt like lying next to a stranger with secrets. I wanted to cry, but the tears wouldn't come. I stared at the ceiling until morning. I had married too soon. And now I didn't know how to get out. The next morning, I packed a small bag. I went to stay with my friend Sarah. She lived 30 minutes away on a quiet street. There were old trees and noisy birds. I hadn't told her everything. I just said I needed space. She gave me a hug. She said, "You don't have to explain. Just rest." I sat on her couch and looked out the window. I felt like the ground had moved under me. I had made a life with someone I barely knew. I had shared a bed, a home, and a name with a man who kept a whole life hidden from me. He didn't call that day. He didn't call the next day either. On the 3rd day, I sent him a text. "I'm safe. I need time." His reply came 2 hours later. "Okay, take what you need. No questions. no concern, just cold words on a screen. Sarah gave me tea and warm meals. She never asked too many questions. I was grateful for that. In the silence, my thoughts became clearer. I thought about the way Ethan looked at me in the beginning. I thought about how warm his smile used to be. I wondered if that smile had ever been real. I stayed with Sarah for 5 days. On the 6th day, I went back to the apartment to get more clothes. Ethan was not home. I walked through the rooms slowly. The place felt cold, even with the heating on. It was never mine, I realized. I had only lived there. I had never belonged. In the bedroom, I noticed something strange. There was a second phone on the nightstand. It wasn't his usual phone. I picked it up. It was locked. But the wallpaper showed a photo of the same woman from the picture. She looked older than me. She looked stronger. I put the phone down. I took my things and left. Back at Sarah's place, I decided I needed answers. Real answers. Not soft lies. I called him the next morning. "Can we talk?" I asked. He sighed. "Now you want to talk. I need the truth," I said. He agreed to meet at a cafe near his office. It was a small, quiet place. When I arrived, he was already there. He was drinking black coffee. He looked calm. Like this was just another day. "I found the second phone," I said as I sat down. His jaw tightened. He didn't speak. "Who is she?" I asked. He looked out the window. "She's my wife." I felt like someone had punched me in the chest, even though I already knew. Hearing it out loud made it real. "You're married to someone else." "I was trying to leave her," he said. "But it's complicated." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was the only thing my body could do. "You married me while you were still married to her," I said. "You lied to me. You lied every day." He didn't deny it. "She doesn't know about you," he said quietly, "and I'd like to keep it that way." My blood ran cold. "You want to keep your lies safe," I said. He looked at me for a long time. "I cared about you, but you didn't respect me," I said. "And that matters more." He rubbed his hands together. "I was going to tell you, but I was afraid of what I asked. Of losing the only part of my life that felt right." I stood up. "You don't get to say that. Not now." I left the cafe. I walked until my legs hurt. The wind was sharp. I welcomed it. It felt real. Unlike the past few months, when I got back to Sarah's, I told her everything. She didn't try to make it better. She just listened. That was enough. The next morning, I started looking for a new place to live. I needed my own space. Somewhere small, quiet, and mine. I found a one-bedroom flat. It wasn't far from where I used to live before Ethan. It had old wooden floors, a small kitchen, and a window that faced the morning sun. I signed the papers the same day. That night, I sat on the floor with boxes around me. I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Peace. It was small, but it was there. Ethan sent me a few messages after that. He asked if I would ever come back. I never replied. There was nothing more to say. Weeks passed. I started sleeping better. I cooked for myself. I went for walks. I smiled at strangers. I talked more to my sister. She had always worried about me. I told her the full story one evening. She cried. Then she said, "You're stronger than you think." I started seeing a counselor once a week. I told her everything, from the rainy train station to the cold apartment to the photo of the hidden family. She didn't judge me. She helped me see something important. My mistake didn't make me weak. It made me human. One day, I saw Ethan on the street. He was with a woman. I recognized her from the photo. They were walking close together, but they weren't holding hands. He didn't see me. I turned around and walked the other way. There was no anger left inside me, only distance. And that was enough. That evening, I sat by the window in my flat. The sun was low. It painted gold lines on the floor. I thought about love. Real love should feel like safety, not fear. It should feel like honesty, not secrets. It should feel like a home you build together, not a place you borrow. I had married too soon, but now I was learning slowly. I was learning how to live on my own, how to listen to my own voice, how to heal. And that was something spring came quietly. The city became softer. Trees opened their leaves again. The air smelled clean and green, like new beginnings. In my new flat, I found joy in little things. I bought a yellow lamp for my bedside. I filled a small shelf with second-hand books. Some had worn covers, some had notes in the margins. I liked the idea of holding a story that someone else had already lived with. One Saturday morning, I went to a local market. I bought oranges, fresh bread, and a small plant with tiny white flowers. The woman at the stall said it was called baby's breath. I had never cared much for plants before, but now I wanted something to take care of, something alive that didn't ask for too much. Back in my flat, I placed the plant on the window ledge. It looked small and a little lost, but I understood that feeling. I made tea. I sat by the window. I watched the street below. People walked their dogs. Children laughed. The world kept moving. For the first time in months, I felt steady. At work, life felt simpler. I didn't try to prove anything anymore. I finished my tasks. I smiled when needed. I left on time. My boss noticed. "You seem clearer," she said. "I like this version of you." I didn't explain. I just nodded. A few weeks later, a new person joined our team. His name was Daniel. He had kind eyes and quiet confidence. He wasn't loud, but people listened when he spoke. He was quick with a joke, but never the kind that hurt someone. I liked that about him. Still, I kept my guard up. We talked during lunch breaks and at meetings. Sometimes we talked near the coffee machine. One morning, as we waited for the machine, he said, "You seem calm, like someone who survived a storm." I looked at him, surprised. That's one way to put it. He didn't ask more questions. He just smiled. "Glad you made it through." His words stayed with me all day. That night, I opened an old folder on my computer. It was a folder where I used to write. I hadn't touched it in nearly a year. I started reading a few lines. Then, without thinking, I began to write again. Not about Ethan, not about pain, just about small things. The sound of wind against windows, the feeling of holding a warm cup, the quiet rhythm of walking alone in the city. It felt good. It felt like coming back to myself. Daniel and I started having lunch together more often. Sometimes we walked to a small park near work. We sat on a bench. We watched squirrels and children playing. He told me stories about his family. He had a younger sister in Canada. He missed her often. He talked about how he once wanted to be a photographer, but life took him a different way. He never asked about my past. I noticed that it wasn't because he didn't care, it was respect. One Friday, he brought me a coffee without asking. "You look tired," he said. "Thought this might help." I smiled. "Thanks. It does." It became a quiet pattern, simple and gentle. No fast steps. No questions I wasn't ready to answer. But sometimes I still had bad nights. I woke up thinking about the photo of Ethan's hidden family, about the lies that didn't look like lies at first, about the way he said, "You won't regret this," on our wedding day. I had believed him. On one of those nights, I walked to my window. The baby's breath plant was growing. Tiny new flowers had opened. I touched one lightly. It felt real and soft. It was proof that healing wasn't loud. It was slow, quiet, and steady. About a month later, Daniel and I went to an art show. I hadn't planned to invite him, but he once mentioned that he liked paintings. We walked slowly through the gallery. We stopped in front of strange colors and shapes. At one point, he took my hand. He didn't say anything. I let him. His hand was warm and calm. I didn't pull away. That night, he walked me home. We didn't speak much, but something had changed. Inside my flat, I stood at the kitchen counter making tea. I realized something important. I was no longer afraid of starting again. I wasn't rushing toward anything. But I wasn't hiding either. A few days later, I told him everything. We sat on my couch with cups of tea in our hands. Rain hit the windows like soft fingers. I told him about Ethan, about the fast wedding, about the cold apartment, about the secret family. I spoke slowly. I didn't cry. I had already cried enough. Daniel listened without interrupting. When I finished, he said, "Thank you for telling me." I nodded. I didn't want to carry it alone. He reached over. He didn't hold me. He just placed his hand lightly over mine. "You're not alone," he said. The next day, I wrote a letter. Not to send, just for me. It was for Ethan. "Ethan, I hope you're well. I hope your children are happy. I won't say much. Just this. What you did hurt me deeply, but I survived. I found a quiet peace you never gave me. I'm not angry anymore. I just don't look back. Ellie." I read it twice. Then I deleted it. More weeks passed. I kept writing. I started reading more. I tried new recipes. I went to the cinema alone one evening. I cried quietly during the trailer, not because it was sad, but because I realized I was no longer afraid of being by myself. One Sunday, Daniel helped me move a new chair into my flat. It was green, soft, and a little too big. We laughed as we pushed it through the door. When we finally got it inside, we sat in it together. We were tired but proud. You know, I said, I never thought I'd be happy in a place like this. It suits you, he said. I looked around, at the plant on the window, at the yellow lamp, at the shelf of books. It does, I said. Later that evening, as he was leaving, he turned at the door. I'm not in a rush, he said. We can take all the time you need. I smiled. That's all I want. That night, I looked at the sky from my window. The stars were quiet and distant, but they were still there. I touched the plant's leaves gently. I whispered, "You're growing." So was I. I had married too soon. I trusted too quickly, but I didn't lose myself. I found her again, bit by bit, word by word, day by day. And this time I wouldn't forget who I was.